Okay, we are here, Parshat Shoftim, and this is the month of Elul. So what we're going to do is we're going to address two concerns. Number one, our primary concern at this time of the year is how can we do something practical, tangible, specific to increase our, let's say, Hashem's satisfaction in us, that we have maximized all that Hashem has invested in us. Now, we use this terminology. We are co-creators with Hashem. Hashem has invested so much in each of us. And we look at ourselves in Elul as Rosh Hashanah is approaching, and we say, how have we maximized that? How have we used that? And can we do more? So in that light, this will be very much about what we can do in the next few weeks and into the next year, a very practical application. And it's going to be based on the first couple of psukim in the Parsha of Shoftim. And what we're going to do after we read the first pasuk is just remind everybody, go back for a second, and remind everybody of the paradigm, the lens through which we view almost everything we learn in Torah. And then you'll tell me at the end of this year how these concepts that we're going to learn about right now in these psukim fit into that paradigm, how they are applications of that paradigm. So the psukim are Shoftim v'Shotrim. This is about the vigilance that we must have in keeping the mitzvahs. So we have judges and those police officers, so to speak, or enforcers, and we should set them up to make sure that everything is done correctly. But more than that, they're really not there to police everybody, but rather to judge the people with Mishpat tzedakah. If people don't know what to do, or if there's confusion, or their mistakes are made, somebody has to sort it all out, and that's what they're there for. And they are in charge of judging Mishpat tzedakah. Now, those are our two words, Mishpat and tzedakah, Mishpat and Tzedakah. When you get the handouts in a minute, you're going to see a lot more about it. But let's just now back off for a minute and view those two concepts in light of, or through the lens of the main idea we always work with. Okay, Mishpat, let's define Mishpat and let's define Tzedakah first. What is Mishpat? Justice. Justice. What is Tzedakah or Tzedek? Righteousness. Everybody agrees that it's not an act of kindness or charity where you do something nice for someone else. Is that Tzedakah? Yes, it certainly is a generous act, but it is a generous act of what nature?
Fairness.
Truth, fairness, what must be done. It's a charity and generosity that must be done, that it's not really optional. Because life cannot go on when it's based strictly on justice. There has to be also the softening of the edges with charitable thinking, charitable reacting, generous, generosity of spirit. This has to be. We need mishpat, we need justice, because Hashem set up a world where everybody has their own world, and has rights. We have rights. We have rights not to be infringed upon, not to be trespassed upon. People just can't walk in our house and take our stuff. People can't harm us. People can't lie about us or ruin our reputation. We have our rights that need to be protected. That's justice, and they will be protected under the law. But we also have the sensibility that nothing's so black and white in the world. And a lot of times justice can be done, but justice can be done in a way that is very painful and harmful and cruel. In fact, you'll see in a moment in the handouts, here we go, that the picture on the front, you could show them the picture on the front, Gitti, the Lady Justice. Lady Justice. Right. You'll see that in a second. Justice is blind. Justice is blind. Everybody's rights must be protected, even if somebody else suffers for it. Okay? On the other hand, kindness or righteousness or tzedakah means that people can really suffer, and that has to be taken into account too. Now, remember our paradigm. Okay? Our paradigm is that we HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are all part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, correct? Like a mother pregnant with a zillion fetuses. And at the same token, we're all part of Hashem, and at the same time, we all live in our own separate worlds. And both of those are true. We live, in a sense, in our own cocoon with our own reality, deserving to be protected, and we each are individuals who live in who live our own lives. At the same time, we're all part of one big whole, and that's where Tzedakah and Mishpat blend in together, correct? Everybody knows what we're talking about? Okay. So this year, today, about charity and justice is devoted to Tanya. If you will look at your sheets, your handouts, you will see a surprise that Tanya did not know about. On the back page of the sheets. Tanya, as usual, Tanya prepared the handouts today, not knowing that the theme of this year was all about her beautiful qualities. What leads her to be a person of such tzedakah, such generosity of spirit, such love, an ayin tov, a lev tov. We talked about that. We prepared that this morning. And we are all so grateful to Tanya for showing us real tzedakah, real justice, real righteousness, love, generosity, happiness, enthusiasm, sharing herself and her abilities with everybody. I'll take one. And this little thing is a tribute. Now, I want to tell you that the thank yous on the back are just thank yous that are relevant to this year. There's a million other thank yous that I did not include on this page. By the way, after Tanya leaves, we are all doomed. I don't know. Now, this pasuk on the back, that's going to be our pasuk today that we're speaking about. Okay? So, so here we go. Let's investigate tzedakah and mishpat. Alrighty? Look in the front page here. We have our first pasuk. Our first pasuk speaks about the idea that we must administer mishpat tzedek. Mishpat and tzedek always go together. There's no such thing as hard, cold justice, not mitigated with righteousness. Look at the next pasuk quoted. It's the third pasuk in the parsha. Tzedek, tzedek tirdo. Pursue righteousness. Double lashon. Pursue it. Which means, remember, righteousness is not black and white. It's not mandated. Law is mandated, but righteousness is the sensitivity and the insight and the wisdom that you must have to understand what happens within the law and because of the law, which is blind. Righteousness is something you must pursue. We must seek out at all times. Assess a situation as it is, what the facts are, what the law is, and then go beyond that, around that. Look at the boundaries of that and say, where does righteousness come in here? Notice that tzedek tirdof is a double lashon. The only other place in the Torah where we are instructed to either run away from something, run to something, or run away from something is the next one. Look at that in Shemos. Midvar, sheker, tirchak. These are the two parallels, the two contrasts. Run to seek justice, and distance yourself from sheker, from that which is untrue, not real. Interestingly enough, these are in contrast to each other. So that justice, righteousness, tzedek, is the opposite of sheker. It's emes. It's not voluntary acts of kindness that I do if I feel like I want to or I'm guilty or whatever. It's emes. The world can't live without tzedakah, without generosity of spirit. Reading between the lines, seeing what's necessary, what has to be done within the law, or because of the law, or notwithstanding the law, right? That's where it is. And stay far away from those rationalizations and those excuses and those lies we tell ourselves that free us from having to go the extra mile. and do what's right and do righteousness. Do the act of tzedakah. Now, let's talk about tzedakah and mishpat. Where do we begin to see how much this is valued? The combination of both is valued by Hashem. Why does Hashem choose Avraham to be the founder of our nation? Look at Bereshit 18:19. Because I know him. We know that the word yodea, to know, is to be similar to. I want to tell you something that the Rambam explains, and it fits into the paradigm we built. Remember we said that we're all part of Hashem? Never think that Hashem knows us the way we know someone else. That I'm my own person, you're your own person, and I try to know who you are, try to understand you, try to experience what you relate, what your life is like, and what your needs are, and how you're coping. And I push myself to try to think about what it must be like for you. That is not the knowing of Hashem to us. That's not how Hashem knows us. Hashem doesn't know us as the way someone knows another person. Hashem knows us by virtue of knowing himself. Correct? Because we're all part of that one. Hashem doesn't know anything outside himself. There is no outside. There is no other than. Hashem knows us by virtue of knowing himself. We strive to know ourselves by virtue of knowing Hashem. It is not possible to know yourself well without first knowing what you're part of, and what's right, and what's true, and what really makes you happy, and what really drives you, and where your soul is leading you to. You know yourself by knowing Hashem. I have to say something Tanya told me. She's going to Eretz Yisrael. She's going to Eretz Yisrael because through learning she knew truth more, and therefore she knew herself more, and she knew her mission more, and she knew her opportunities and her potential more. There's a knowing of the self that comes from deciding to go to Eretz Yisrael, and knowing that that's best. That's where a person will do best, and that came from learning. So this idea that Hashem knows himself knows us by virtue of knowing himself, makes us understand that if we don't know Hashem, we don't know what's right and true, we won't know ourselves at all. So Hashem knows Avraham. Hashem knows Avraham because Avraham knows Hashem. And he knows that he will command his children and his household after him to preserve the derech Hashem. And what is that? What are the next three words? Lasso, tzedakah, umishpat. To always combine absolute justice and also righteousness. Okay? What's the bracha we make in Shemona Esrei? Ohev, tzedakah, umishpat. How does that work? How do you operate with tzedakah and mishpat? Everybody look in the Gemara, Sanhedrin. There's a perfect story. David HaMelech was the closest, or as closest as the greats could be to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in love. David was also a judge. The kings of Israel were often judges. The Gemara tells us a story. Here's what tzedakah umishpat looks like. A landlord and a tenant come before the judge, or David. And the landlord says, what do you want from me? He hasn't paid rent in 6 months. I need money to buy food for my family. We have a contract. I demand that he pay me the 6 months or he leave now. I want him out. And I want him out and I want them back money. And the tenant says, what do you want from me? My wife, chas v'shalom, is sick, and I have these kids, and I lost my job, and should I be on the street? And what do you want from me? Where am I supposed to go? I have no options. I have no family. What should I do? This is a conflict of justice and kindness. So what's the resolution? Only both together. The resolution is, David HaMelech said, you must pay him 6 months' rent that you owe him. And if you're going to stay, you have to pay him this month. And here's the money to pay him. That is tzedakah and mishpat. That is respecting the law, which must be blind. The law must be blind. You cannot be bribed. You cannot be more compassionate because somebody's poor or weak or has issues in their life. You're not allowed to. There's truth in the world. There must be law. People have rights. But there also must be tzedakah, which is generosity of spirit, and it is not voluntary. It's not something we opt for or against. It's demanded. It's emes. And the reason it's emes is because if we understand that we're all in this together and different people's circumstances are different, then we understand that there's a flow between everyone. And my empowering and helping someone is helping everybody. And it's not a competitive world where everybody's a threat. We talked about that with Cain, right? Where we live in a world of fear and aloneness, disconnected from God, disconnected from each other, viewing everybody as a threat. That's not our world. Now, this generosity of spirit, we see it again in Avraham. And what we're going to talk about today is how do you cultivate it? How do you give more life to it? Look at this switch in the Lashon. This is what Moshe Shapiro points out. Vayomer Hashem al Avram lech lecha. This is Avram who knew Hashem, who knew Tzedakah u'Mishpat. He knew what was demanded in justice, and he also knew what was necessary for the good of the world, for the good of humanity, whether it be demanded or not. So Vayomer Hashem el Avraham. Hashem spoke to Avraham and said, Lech lecha. We know that the term for Hashem communicating with people, when that term is used as Vayomer, we are taught it's Lashon Raka. It's soft. Soft doesn't mean Hashem whispers. Hashem doesn't have a mouth, a speaking apparatus where he whispers or screams. Soft means not demanding. In other words, it means that Hashem's will is knowable, it's discoverable, but it's not being imposed and enforced on anyone directly. It's optional. Vayomer Hashem el Avram lech lecha. In other words, Avraham understood deeply. He saw in his nevuah that he had a mission, that he had the ability, he had the talent, he had the ability to speak, to teach, to the personality. He could do what all the people before him couldn't do. He was not the first one to discover Hashem. He was the first one that figured out a way to bring it to the people, to the masses, in a practical way. Make a bracha, hachnasas orchim. There's not a lot of forces here competing. There's one God who's in charge of everything. He knew how to sell it, to inspire people, to open their hearts. He wasn't the first one to discover Hashem. There was Shem Ever. There was always all that list in Bereshis of the genealogies between Adam and Noach to Avram, all those names. Those are the people in every generation who were the bearers of the monotheistic truth that started with Adam. And the 6 mitzvahs that Adam was given, and then the 7th that Noach was given. There were always people, but they were on a hill, meditating somewhere in the Himalayas, I don't know. Avram was the first person to take it to the people, to write, to speak, to reach their hearts. That's what made him unique. And so he understood that where he was operating over there in Kuwait, or Kasdim, he wasn't having maximum efficiency. And there was a better place for him in Canaan. And he understood that Hashem was hoping, so to speak, but not demanding that he see himself worthy and take upon himself this mission. It was knowable, it was discoverable that there was a job to be done, and it was also knowable to Avraham that he could do it. But it would take a tremendous amount of effort and sacrifice and motivation. It was a very big job to change the world, literally change the world, be the founder of every religion that has some essence of truth in it. So what does it say a few psukim later? Vayelech Avram. What is the next few words? Kasher diber elav Hashem. Hashem never spoke to him b'lashon diber. Lashon dibor is like aseres hadibros, demanding. Lashon kosher, demanding. Hashem never spoke. In fact, in the entire Sefer Bereshis, it never says, except one time, Vayedaber Hashem el anyone, except Noach. Vayedaber Hashem el Noach, say min hateva. That's the only one. You start seeing all the Vayedabers in Shemos when we're getting the Dibros, when Hashem's demanding something from the world. But you never see it in Bereshis. So what is this? Vayelech Avram kasher diber. Avram went to Eretz Yisrael as Hashem commanded him. Hashem didn't command him. But to Avraham, the fact that it was a good thing and it was a right thing, and he was able to do something there, to Avraham, that compelled him. That left him no option. Many people are aware that there's good things to be done. There's ways to help. There's ways to improve the world. There's ways to make other people's lives better. There's ways to grow. We can all adopt children from the orphanage, or we can all, there's so many things that should be done, need to be done. But it's the rare people that say, I have to do it because it needs to be done. I feel I must be the one to do it. To me, it's an obligation. It's demanding something from me. I hear it as something I cannot ignore. Those are unique people. People that know what can be done and feel this tremendous imperative to do it, to make sure it happens. We have a very special person here who lives like that. Who lives like that. Tanya did not know this morning when I was giving her all these. So this was about her. We have a person who lives like that. She sees something and she does. I want you to know, and this is not a chas v'shalom, this is just a teeny, teeny, teeny drop in the bucket. You know when you go to the mall and you see all those Israelis selling Dead Sea stuff? They're all at Tanya's house for Shabbos. I just want you to know. I'm not kidding. They're all there. And she adopts them and she makes weddings for them. And she takes care of them. I kid you not. There are people that know what has to be done, and then there are people that feel compelled by what has to be done. The question is, how do you develop this? If we think about Mishpat and Tzedakah, and think about how we can encourage ourselves to be more generous of spirit, we realize like this. Mishpat, this is my father-in-law's genius composition of these two ideas. It's on this sheet here. Mishpat is when we justify ourselves to the world. I gave my tzedakah. I'm entitled to buy this, $100,000 car. All my money is made honestly. I'm allowed to do it. I don't have to give charity. It's not just because the person living next to me is suffering and starving, doesn't compel me by law to give more than the charity that I gave. Mishpat is what you can use to justify yourself to the world. And we have to justify ourselves to the world, at least by the standards of Mishpat, that's for sure. But tzedakah is when we look around the world and we see things that aren't good enough and things that could be better, and we have to justify that to ourselves. How can I live with that going on right here? How can I live when that person could use help and I have the ability to help and I'm just too busy? How could I live with myself? That question of how do I justify my world beyond myself, and how do I justify that to me? That's what tzedakah is. And then we're pushed to ask ourselves, how do we ensure that we're never losing sight of that, and we're motivated to give of ourselves, to let ourselves overflow, which is true chesed, right? Chesed is not a sacrifice, a nice thing you do for someone else, right? Chesed is when you invite other people to be part of your world, not because you're doing something nice for them, because your ani happens to include everyone. And so they're invited to participate in your world, just by nature of the fact that they crossed your path. This invitation to include people in our world is based on having a world that's large. The smaller my ani is, the less there is for others to participate in. Avram was the model of the chesed, of everybody was invited to participate in his life, in his world. Whoever crossed his path was part of his world. Did you notice that when you do chesed to another person in a sustained way, they hate you? It doesn't take very long till they hate you. Because nobody likes being a taker. But if you make a person feel that they're part of your world, and they're free, they're invited, they're welcome, They're part of your world in a natural way. It's not a one-way street. Then they never feel that resentment. When the ani of a person grows, there's so much more for everyone else to participate in. And there's so much more generosity, and there's so much more overflow, and then that overflow includes everybody, and we say, how can I, keep myself in my own little bubble when I see and when I feel and I understand what's going on? I have to justify the rest of what's going on around me to myself.
How do you feel when they keep on calling you for tzedakah, for organization you have never heard of?
What I tell them is that I do not ever give pledges on the phone. And send me something. We have a right to give tzedakahs to organizations of your choice. Things, especially ones that you've checked out, that you know that people know carefully. You have to be responsible with your tzedakah money also. But in general, everyone in the community, everyone who crosses our paths, family members, they're part of our world. We're not elitists. We're not cliquey. That's the opposite of chesed. That's the opposite of tzedakah. Now, how do you encourage that? So, Pirkei Avos Perek 2. So, let me read it here inside. This is Perek 2. It's interesting. I don't know if you know, but in Pirkei Avos, in different Sfarim, the Mishnahs are labeled differently. So, like, I think in mine it's 13.
This one was 9.
This one is 9. So, here's what it says. Okay? So, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 Talmidim, and he said to them, go out and see what is the derech tova, what is the best path, what constitutes a well-lived life, what's the best path in life that a person should cling to. Rabbi Eliezer said, an ayin tova, a good eye. Rabbi Yeshua said, a good friend. Rabbi Yossi said, a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said, he who sees the future, what's going to happen. And Rabbi Elazar said, a leiv tov. I want you to know that when I looked at this Mishnah, every single one of these applies to my friend Tanya. Especially the one that says, shachen tov, because you know what it means? Matzui etzlo ben bayom ben balayla. He's there night and day. Tanya's at my house 6 o'clock every single morning. Doing the sheets, the preparation for the share, all kinds of stuff. All of these things. These are the best ways. Now, of all of them, which was selected as the best of all? The leiv tov. Generosity of spirit. A broad heart. A heart. Now, ayin tov is not the same as leiv tov. I want to distinguish. Ayin tov, a good eye, means, like it says by Bilam, who is the Talmidim of Bilam? Someone has a bad eye, right? That means jealous, petty, competitive, feeling threatened by everybody else. Always thinking everyone has more than me. Why don't I have this? That's an ayin tov. Never forgetting a person. Ayin ra. Never forgetting a person anything. That's ayin tov. Ayin tov is happy with everybody. Let everybody be as great as they can be, because then there's more flow between everyone, more for everybody to gain. But a leiv tov is not lack of jealousy. And it's not just, happiness for everybody and happiness with our own lot. A leiv tov is the source and the core of all other kochos. If a person's heart is good, then everything else is going to be good. They'll be a good neighbor and a good friend, and they'll have a good eye, and they'll see the future. They'll understand the ramifications of their choices and everyone else's choices. They'll give good advice. That's a leiv tov. That's a good-hearted person, because a good-hearted person sees through a special lens. Yes, we're all part of Hashem, and each of us live in our own separate world. But the membranes between all of us are semi-permeable. Semi-permeable. They're not, what's the word I'm looking for? Impermeable. Right? They are semi-permeable. They let everyone comes and goes. Our door is open. People are welcome in our home. This is when a person has a leiv tov, then by definition they're going to be a person who does tzedakah. who just constantly is justifying the world outside to themselves and saying, how am I doing in light of what's going on around me, right? I want to take this time to mention, and I'll send it out by email, Achiezer just started a very nice new program called CIMBY, Chesed in my backyard. If you go on Achiezer, you can register for 10 different things, and they'll text you or send you a message or put you on a group for, like, you know, if any of those opportunities come up, and they're quick things. You could do an hour here, an hour there. You look around and you see, you know, what's going on in my backyard, and how can I share more? How can I be part of everybody else's life and make everyone else's life a little easier more? It means to keep our eyes open and have not just an ayin tov, but open eyes to those around us, and not wait for people to tell us what they need before we realize what they need. Now, this last pasuk is the pasuk that I picked, and it's on the back on the picture of me and Tanya in Australia. That was the best trip ever. Tov ayin hu yivarech. A person with a good eye will be blessed. A generous eye. Ki nasan milachmo ladol, gives his bread to the poor. Just want you to know, our friend Tanya has these beautiful Friday night dinners with 25, 30 people. You don't know who we have here. We have a gem. 30 people. People who don't otherwise have a Shabbos. And it's fun, and Karlabach Minyanim, and places to sing, and places to daven. She is an ayin tov. And this pasuk here that I put here, it said that this person will be blessed. Hashem told Avraham, when he went off to Eretz Yisrael, you will be blessed. Blessing is expansion. Making more of yourself. Finding deeper levels of yourself. Having more to give. We will have a great loss. But Eretz Yisrael will have a huge gain. I already introduced Tanya yesterday to the director of Neve Yerushalayim. And I could already see all kinds of collaboration over there happening. Forget about it, her and Kesher Yehudi, that's going to take off. All kinds of plans. Now, this is me and Tanya in Australia. We had a great trip, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to be happy with where you are right now and make the absolute most of it. That's it. No, that's an ayin tov. Never looking at anyone else and thinking, oh, if I only had this or that. You could read the thank yous. This is the best right-hand woman I ever had or will have. If anybody wants to attempt to compete and fill Tanya's shoes, you can apply for the job. You get a very high salary, right, Tanya? You get a very high salary for the job. In Shemayim. And,
We need a committee.
You need a committee. You have no idea, trust me. You have no idea. And so today, what I want to do now, we're going to end a little early, I want a few pictures.